What's up, guys? We're here again on a Saturday morning. Another week's went by. We've actually started to get some work done on some of these car projects in the shop. As I've said in our previous videos, we've been slam busy trying to keep the website orders up, and we're still busy, but I've made some time in between all that to make some progress on some of these things. So behind us, I'm going to do a dedicated video to this twin turbo 5th gen. It's a 2010 Camaro owned by Rusty Emerson in Virginia, and I've hit and missed on this car a little bit with the videos, telling y'all a little bit about it here and there, but I haven't ever made a dedicated video to all that we've done to this thing so far. It's been here a long time, so I'm going to go through with everything that's done to it so far. The turbo kit and everything's pretty well done. We've just got a lot of the minor details now to button up on the car before it goes to the next step, which is wiring and stuff. So Rusty brought us this car. We actually drove it in here off the trailer. Just a basic rundown of it. It is a 440 cubic inch LSX Brodix head combo from LME. The engine they've got on YouTube on their engine dyno, it made 690 like it is in the car. The car is really subtle. It's got when we drove it in here, you wouldn't think it was that powerful all motor, but it's a definite sleeper. But Rusty wanted one of these next level builds, you know, a lot of power, everything kept completely OEM on the car. Mark's back there wide open this morning. It's like 6 a.m. by the way. So he kind of give us the reins to do what we wanted to as far as the direction of the car. So we suggested for the cubic inch to go with twins, and on this particular setup we have the mirror image 76mm precisions, which really look nice in there. I like the Precision and Garrett based turbos because their packaging is so good for how much power they can deliver. I forget the exact specs on the turbine and stuff, but we got the bigger size because of the cubic inch of the motor. Rusty is super anal about symmetry in the engine bay and stuff, so we decided to go with an upswept style header. We built these in-house. One detail I'll mention before I forget to say something about it: I took the reservoir off of the power steering. I need to move this camera where I can get in there. I took the reservoir off the power steering pump, welded a AN fitting on there, and now the reservoir is going to be over here. This allowed us to keep the headers symmetrical side to side and not have one that was way over to get around the reservoir that was on it. Like I said, the power steering reservoir here and the coolant reservoir here, and notice that they are the same shape. Obviously the power steering reservoir is a little bit different in size, but that was another thing about symmetry. You know, just glancing at it, they both look the same, but they're really different. This one's got a lot more capacity. The turbos are supported by the Maven turbo supports like we always use. We've got the LME billet intake. Started out with a single throttle body, then we switched the inlet to the dual throttle body whenever they came out with that. Pretty convenient because you can just change the front snout of the intake. And these are LS9 throttle bodies, I believe. We got them turned sideways. It clears the plug-in by the water pump by just a hair's width. So pretty good design there. Looks a lot more low-key without the stepper motors sticking out on the sides or on the top. radiator. We built an intercooler for this car originally, which I was glad another company was able to utilize it. And the heater's gonna cut on, so I'm gonna have to start screaming at the camera. But we built an intercooler, twin inlet, single outlet, whenever it had the single throttle body. And he wanted the dual throttle body. So we backed up a little bit, and I was able to sell that intercooler to a local company in North Carolina here, I believe. And they were able to use it on another 5th gen. So we built another one that was the same core size, but a vertical core instead of a horizontal core, and did the twin inlets. Now, because we did that, if you'll notice the OEM radiator on these cars, the filling point is offset. Well, because we wanted to have a twin inlet tubes coming right up the middle like this, we felt this was the best routing for them instead of trying to come up from the side. And because of that, the fill point couldn't be where it was anymore. So Fluidyne, we had them build us a custom radiator to fit this car, twin fans. It's more capacity than the stock radiator, but it's lower profile. It's slightly shorter, obviously thicker. Switched everything to AN fittings. Also incorporated, if you can see it, the AC condenser, the OEM AC condenser. So the lines, got the lines kind of tucked right here. See them unhooked. The lines will go back to it. Everything is just like it was OEM, but it's got a way better radiator in it. And it's lower profile. And we made the fill point here, which is still the high point, so it's still gonna get the air out. And you can fill it over here, and it'll fill the radiator by this fitting right here. So that was, by doing that, we was able to run these pipes up the middle like we had originally planned. You see the intercooler, I've still got to trim this rubber piece here, but the intercooler, if I can turn the camera where it, you can see the intercooler goes way up into the core support. It's Frenched in. The tank is really big on the top. That gets it above where the radiator, the top of the radiator is. It's got a pretty hard taper on it that goes up in there towards the front. So just a lot of details with this car that we've tried to address and get them tuned in to exactly what Rusty wants. So the last thing that we've done here recently on the top is the wastegate tie-in. So you've got all this stuff going on the top. Everything's got to fit under the hood with the OEM hood shut, and the wastegates had to go in. I really love the look of the car from the top, and I didn't want the wastegates to be right there or hanging on top of the turbo right here like a big eyesore. But you know, I thought, well, God, I'm getting tongue-tied. Rusty might want that. So I sent him some pictures of some different positions to put the wastegates, but in my mind, I liked having them down here kind of low-key, where when you look under the hood, you're not staring at a big awkward wastegate sticking off the side of the pipe or something. It just looks like it would clutter all this like look of the under the hood too much. So he liked my suggestion about holding them down here. So what we did, we came off of this bend with another bend, Frenched it in, and put the wastegates down here, which that allowed us to dump them back into the downpipe with a flex bellow. And because our run is so short right there, I was going to put a V-band connection right there, but because our run was so short, I actually notched the flex bellow and welded it directly to the pipe. And with doing that, you can pull the header off and the downpipe will come right out of the hole without having to pull the turbo. I've done it to both of them yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I should say, and it worked out great. The main thing that I will reiterate with the way we build things is people have to work on these cars, and if you can't get them apart without having to take the entire car apart to do it, then that makes it just a nightmare. So everything that we build, it might take a little bit longer than just throwing something together, but everything is thought out in how you're going to take it apart. And when we do build stuff, we do take it apart, you know, a dozen times before it leaves here. So I know how difficult it's going to be, and some things are just unavoidable, but if you step back and think a little bit, you can always think of a better solution usually to make something where you can take it apart and work on it. So on this car, to get everything apart, it's really not that big a deal. You just take the header off and one clamp for the wastegate, and the whole header and everything will come out wastegate. And the downpipe, take one V-band clamp loose at the bottom at the turbo, and then rotate the thing right out of there. And it's no big deal. So again, I'll show you this side. This side was a little bit tighter. Got the power steering pulley right there. See how it's tied in right there. On the wastegates, I put a pretty big gusset right here. Pretty much the whole length of the pipe I had left. You also see it on that side. We do that because there's a lot of vibration on the wastegate pipes. There it goes. Heater took forever to cut off. It's pretty cold this morning though. But I definitely like the way that turned out with them being down in there kind of hidden, where when you look at it, you got a very nice symmetrical view from the top. You haven't got some eyesores hanging out. Another thing I'll talk about, I actually threw this thing on here this morning, is our 5th gen bumper support bar. This is on our website. We're going to use one on his car. We could have actually, I was looking at it this morning, we could have actually slid the intercooler way up, but it wouldn't have worked coming out into the engine bay like we wanted it to. So now we have a pretty good amount of room up there if any other thing needed to be mounted in the front. But if you're interested in one of those bars, check it out on our website. They come powder coated black. They're I really forget how much they cost, honestly. A little over $100, I think. Trying to think any other details I've left out. Also, this intake is a 16 injector intake. It's got ports on the inside of the runners right down the valley for extra fuel rails and stuff if you want to do it. On this car, we've got the ID 2600 injectors. A couple different things we've already bought for the car. It's got a 4 triple pump setup that's going in the tank. We've already got that. I think we got the 4 pump and the injector set up from Tick Performance. They hooked us up with that. The wastegates are the Turbo Smart 50 millimeter. This is mainly going to be a street car. And those are good and compact gates, perform really well. Black clamps and stuff, Race Part Solutions always for our clamps and couplers and stuff. This still is a street car, even though I switched to a solid style motor mount. We just swapped out the isolators that are, I think it had BMR or something, the polyurethane mounts. We swapped them out for the solid billet mounts to kind of stiffen everything up, but we still put rubber couplers on these connections just because the vibration and stuff, and this car will not see the track that much. This is mainly going to be a street car. There's really no chance of blowing these off either, just because of the way they're mounted. You're really not going to get the pipe out of there unless you distort the coupler a lot getting it out. That's why V-band connections, whenever you solid mount stuff, is kind of aggravating unless it's a race car and you can really get in there to it. Plus the clearance right here on top of the radiator will not allow any kind of flange like that. It's got to be a rubber coupler. I guess we'll raise the car up and go underneath. Really can't think of anything else here on top. Another thing, people have commented on the pictures. There goes the air compressor. People have commented on the pictures about the plug clearance and access. Well, all of that is tested. You can see I've got a plug wire on this. I can put my finger between the plug wire and the downpipe, and it's nowhere near the header. And all the other plugs you can get to just fine. On this side is a little bit more tricky because you got this ABS stuff in the way, but you can still get your hand down in there because this fuel line stuff, it's gonna be gone. So that's another thing. Don't build headers that you cannot get to the plugs and stuff on. See people all the time, you know, they almost have to pull their headers off just to change plugs. And with the turbo car, you're not going to be having to change plugs that often anyway. I mean, on some of my stuff, I know on Lauren's car, we rode probably 1.5 years and never changed plugs on hers. And it did fine. It just depends on how clean your tune is and stuff. But this car shouldn't be that bad to change plugs on. And another thing on the plumbing, we're probably going to get Brown and Miller to come in here and build all the plumbing and stuff, because they can get a lot more compact than our AN hoses right here. You can see this one, if it comes off straight, it's going to end up going straight into the pipe area. So it really needs a slight angle on this and a slight angle on this one to make a straight shot to the water pump. And it's just easier for those guys to come in here because they have all the fittings and stuff. I'd sit here and order fittings for a week before I ended up getting just the perfect lineup like I want. The valve covers, we're gonna end up doing billet valve covers at the very end, saving all the pretty stuff for last. The headers and stuff is probably gonna end up being polished, mixed in with some black stuff. So, well, let's raise the car up and see what's underneath. All right, I stopped at about head level just to show you the bottom of the tanks and stuff. You can see the bottom of the coolant tank is tapered down. That's for tire clearance. We turned the tire on the lift and different things and got it as close as we could with feeling like we had enough clearance. The cold pipes come out of the turbo right there. They sweep around. Turbo Smart 50mm blow-off valves. We've got them symmetrical on each side, right at the corner. Both clocked the same way. See the cold pipe ties into the turbo there. Nice shot of the Maven mount there. See the power steering comes in the bottom, or the feed from the tank, which this is just an old fuel line that I put on there just to have something on there to test clearance. That's not going to be the actual line. got it on up. The intercooler mounts and radiator mounts, we've got rubber isolators threaded on both sides for those. We haven't made the top mount for the radiator yet because I was kind of waiting on mounting up the wastegates and make sure that they was gonna go where we wanted them. So we'll make the supports for the radiator and the intercooler next on our list. But the bottom, we've got these little brackets, and I still got to sand the excess off of them. But it also is setting on rubber isolators mounts here. They're threaded on both sides just like the ones on the radiator. So that'll help absorb some of the vibration. As far as exhaust, this thing has got a lot of pipes on it. We've got 3.5 inch all the way to the back. See how it comes down there? You could see it from the top whenever I was videoing from up there. We've got Vibrant 4-inch straight through race mufflers. These will give a visual that this car has catalytic converters on it when it really don't. Unless they take the pipe off and look inside of here, the state of Virginia is never going to know that this car doesn't have catalytic converters. Because we put our O2 bung before and after the muffler. So that's typically where they are, if anybody knows about OEM stuff on a OEM car. That's why we done that, kind of like a trick. We've got flex bellows here because knowing what we know about stainless this long, I mean, this is about 15 or 17 feet of stainless on each side. When it gets warm, it's going to grow in length a little bit, so always need some type of flex section in your exhaust to keep it where it'll move a little bit. These flex bellows come from Ace Race Parts. They're generally a little bit more beefy than the Vibrant ones, which bellows do fine on exhaust. They kind of get a bad rap when people try to put them in the hot side of turbos, and which I have done it before when I didn't have any other choice. But they do have a life expectancy whenever their back pressure's that high. We tied it together right here to keep it from shaking back and forth. Doesn't look like, sorry I dragged the camera on the bottom of the car. Doesn't look like we have that much clearance, but we do. We tied it together again right there. Got more V-band connections right here so they can take the exhaust apart. You see on the back coming out, we tried to make it symmetrical even though the rear end is offset. You can see right there it looks symmetrical. Well, when you get down here, you can see it is one-sided going around that rear. That's just something you have to work around. Joey designed this trick exhaust hanger set up here. Got our name in it. The hanger is also offset, but these are slotted on these tabs on the exhaust, so you can change the elevation of the exhaust if you need to. And when you take the exhaust off, best of all, you do not have to remove these hangers from the rubber unless you have the special tool to pop them out. I know a lot of you guys have cussed these things trying to get them out with a WD-40 or something like that. So that was a little slick design that he come up with. Show you the back side here. These rods actually come down through the hanger and weld on the bottom and the top Pretty much the same thing on the end. Well, can't really see good in there. Give me just 1 second here. I want you to see that hanger. Get my old cell phone light out. You see these hangers are also independent, where you can move them up and down, and they can unbolt without having to take the things out of the rubber isolators there. As far as the exhaust tips, this car had a Cook's system on it, and he wanted the same exact look of the system that we took off the car, which we ended up selling that system and applying the money to his bill. But we called Cook's and they wanted $950 for just these tips. And we thought that was a little bit out of reach for this build. I'm wiping the dust out of them. We thought that was a little bit out of reach. So we found these tips by themselves online, just the tips. They're 3-inch inlet on the back, 3.5 outlet, or I should say the front, and the back is 3.5 outlet. We made the merge ourselves to go back into them, and duplicated what was on the car from Cook's for a fraction of the cost to Rusty. Just took a little work, but it definitely turned out good. People have messaged us because we have posted pictures of this exhaust system about actually us doing an exhaust system. I will tell you, this is a very expensive exhaust system. You're talking about 3.5 inch of stainless all the way from the turbos to the back. That's 36 feet or so of piping, not counting all the mandrel bends involved to make all the different angles and work around all the obstructions. So it's definitely something that you build out of necessity and not out of just, well, I guess you would build it if you really wanted it and could afford it, but definitely buy a production exhaust system versus a custom one, or you're gonna pay more than twice, maybe 3 times what a production exhaust system costs. But I think he said he paid around $4 grand for the headers to the tips for the first system. So if you take the headers out of the equation, it's probably about on par for what we have in this system. So, but it should sound pretty good. Like I said, the race mufflers up there, they're just completely straight through. There's no obstructions, trying to keep the back pressure as low as possible. You can see, as far as taking the exhaust down, he can just take this loose and this one loose, and the exhaust will actually rest on the cross member. So if he ever has to take the downpipes or anything out on the front, they don't have to take the entire exhaust down. But if you want to take the entire exhaust down, you just pop this cross member loose, take the V-bands loose at the front, take the V-bands loose here, and because the hangers are back here and there, the rear part of the exhaust doesn't have to come off at all. So things are a lot easier to line up that way. And that was a big concern of his as well, is getting everything lined back up. That's why we welded. Another reason why we welded the midsection pipes together like that. So that's basically it for Rusty's car up to this point. I don't think I forgot anything, but next in line we're going to finish up the radiator mounts, and then we're probably going to pull the intake back off, make sure it's got all the sensors and different things that it's supposed to have on it. Go ahead and throw the injectors in there, and then proceed to the wiring stage of it, which I think we're going to have one of our friends that's one of the Motec gurus. He's going to go through it, wire it up with Motec, and it's going to have all the streetability, all the OEM stuff's going to work inside of it, and also it's going to have all the race car abilities that comes with having a standalone system. So we'll keep you updated on that. I just wanted to do a dedicated video of the car since it's been here for so long, and I just realized that I haven't done a dedicated video on it. I've thrown a couple details here and there in other videos about it, but nothing that we can actually title the twin turbo 5th gen. So there it is, all the details, and we'll see you next time with another update. See ya.